Thank you. It's amazing, 21 years ago. I remember just being quite inspired. The second monk at Bodhinyana Monastery, the one who was looking after it while I was away, was trying so hard to contact me, or at least to contact somebody who might know if I was safe. And I thought, wow, I never realized he liked me that much. And eventually when I got back to Perth, I said, thank you for trying to call up the usual supporters to make sure I was okay. I didn't realize you cared about me that much. And he said, I care about you, Ajahn Brahm, because if anything happens to you, I'll be the one who has to do all the work. It was totally selfish, but I laughed, it was funny. And it was wonderful that there was some problems in Penang, but this was not the heart of where the many problems were. And it was wonderful to see how people reacted. There are some things where you can do something, sometimes you can't. And so because of that, when you can't do anything, a wonderful thing to do is to go to a place like the temple, to do your meditation. And when you get your meditation going, all that fear disappears. I mean, why do you have to have fear? There's nothing you can do. It's much better to really relax, to become really, really peaceful. And then you can send loving kindness to all the people who are injured. And that loving kindness is very powerful as long as you're not worrying. So the problem is that we worry way too much. And it's wonderful when we can let that worry disappear. And we can enjoy our meditation and afterwards send loving kindness to all those people who need it. There always seems to be some tragedies or some disasters in the world. And when there are disasters, I always say, I don't get negative about disasters. Disasters are opportunities. Opportunities when we can go and help others. When the people who are not hurt in those tsunamis or earthquakes or landslides or whatever else happens, we can actually go there and help and serve and look after. And I always think that's beautiful, what people can do. And it doesn't matter if you are Malaysian and they are Sri Lankan, or that you are Buddhist and they are Christian. We help each other. And that's a beautiful part about the world. If I see someone who is suffering, I don't go and ask them, are you a Muslim or a Buddhist? You just help, however you can. And that's something which is called humanity. And that's something which can unite us all. And that's something which inspires me whenever I see that. And people just looking after each other. If you need any help, I will come and serve you. So those sorts of memories I have of going to places where there have been disasters, where there have been difficulties. There's always something you can do. And I do remember what we did as a Buddhist society over in Perth, a long way away from any tsunami. Nevertheless, we held fundraisers. And there I must say thank you to the Singaporean Buddhist Fellowship at the time, because they told me that in Singapore, any dollar which gets donated to the tsunami fund, the state tsunami fund to help people overseas, for every dollar that you give to that fund, the Singapore government will give another $2. So you get $3. So I asked the people over in Singapore, is it fair if I do a fundraiser in Perth, send the money to you, and then you put it in that fund? So we get $3. That's what we did. So I had a big fundraiser and got lots and lots of money for the tsunami fund. They sent it to Singapore, and Singapore trebled it. it's a nice. I thought, is that stealing, or is that sort of fraud? I said, no, we told everybody. And they said, no, that's fine. We're very happy to help. And it's also, that's why we raise so much money for little orphanages. I remember going to those orphanages over in Sri Lanka. And in those orphanages, there were the kids who lost their parents. And it's kind of sad. But you say, look, the Buddha, he ran away from his parents. There's many people who lost their parents. Patachara lost her children. And look what happened to her. She became this wonderful arahat. So please never let tragedy spoil your life. There's lots of other people there to help and assist and whatever they can. And it also teaches you a deep meaning of life. The deep meaning of life is you can't always look after yourself. That's number one, why we have a family. And a family can look after any of the children or grandparents who somehow or other lose their connections to the other family in life. And the parents or grandparents, uncles and aunties can look after some of the children. And that way, when we help each other, it's amazing the resource we have as a nation, as a community, as family, how we can actually live through the disasters of life and make a lot of wonderful things happen. And I do remember just some of the kids, the schools would, instead of teaching people about tsunami, they actually arranged flights to, I think it was to Burma, and to help the kids who lost so much in those regions which got hit by a tsunami. And the kids, that was one of the best parts of their education. To be able to meet with other kids and learn how to speak with them and help them. And sometimes to realize just how lucky they were in the lands of their birth, which weren't hit by a tsunami. Each one of these tragedies is always an opportunity. There's still something I remember being taught when I was a kid, because I was brought up in UK. One of the things which we always thought were tragedies, and I remember seeing evidence of that, what we used to call bomb sites in London. During the Second World War, there was a huge amount of destruction. And many sites had not been repaired yet. They were devastated. And I remember just my father telling me that in one of those stories from the First World War, on Christmas Day, anniversary yesterday, I don't know how many years ago that was, maybe 110 years ago, the soldiers fighting for their countries on either side of in their trenches, either side of the lines, decided, they said, this is Christmas Day, well, they were both Christians on both sides, let's not have any war today. And instead they played a soccer match, England versus Germany. I never found out who won. Actually, they both won, because for one day they were being friends and acting like human beings rather than fighting wars. And I thought that was so brilliant. Each one of those people playing soccer, while there were guns, primed and ready to fight. Each one of those who's playing soccer should have got medals of honor, Victoria Cross or Gold Stars or whatever they fought for, to have that friendship instead of that fighting. Examples like that inspire me. That's one of the reasons why I thought it was so cool when I was invited to go over to Korea, to actually do a peace walk in the demilitarized zone. And I remember just seeing some of those people who accompanied me. There's about 3,000 of them. And they could look over to the other side of the DMZ. And in the far distance they could see the barrier there. And just after that barrier, there were their brothers and sisters, their aunts, relations they hadn't seen for so many years. I looked in their face, and you can see just the pain of being separated from people you love. And so those barriers, those zones, those walls, isn't it wonderful? We can even try and lessen that division which divides the people we love and the people we grew up with. So anyway, those experiences are wonderful experiences. Even things which we think of as disasters. Because I was born in London, one of the things I remember studying at school was what they called the Great Fire of London in 1600 and something. Was that a disaster? That cleared so many old buildings away from the central area of London. And that allowed some smart people to design a sewage system in that area. If ever you improve the sewage system of Penang, it's so hard because people own property, and where you want to dig a hole, you can't dig it. Now, for once, the London government, whoever was running it, had access everywhere. There's no buildings around central London, or they're all burnt to bits, and they could actually make new sewage lines. And that was where it started. And those sewage lines worked so perfectly. And they said that yes, there was many people lost property, but they used that opportunity to improve the living standards in that place. And that's where the sewage system in London started from the Great Fire, from destruction, from immense suffering. There's always opportunities to do something better next time. Anyway, they took those opportunities and it was great. Tsunamis as well. They took the opportunities to make places less vulnerable to things like the big waves. But anyhow, the story of tonight's talk is about stillness. And this is one of those subjects which really motivates me. You think I've just talked about action when things are going wrong, help to people in need, something you can do to help and assist someone. I have no training in medicine. I have no training in psychology. I have lots of experiences in meditation, and that's where I learn how to be of assistance to people. One of those ways I assist, for those of you who've got a good memory, you probably remember this from the last time I gave a talk up here in Penang. Well, not on this trip, a couple of years ago, because I love telling this story. There is a little society over in Perth. They call themselves Assets, ASSETS, and it stands for the Australian Society of Survivors of Torture and Trauma. Australia is a lucky country. It's been economically prosperous, a lot of space, and thank goodness there's enough smart people there to say, please come and share this land with us. Especially those people really, really suffering. I know migration in many countries, they're very afraid of that idea. I'm a migrant into Australia. I came from UK, and half the people, more than half the people are migrants. I know sometimes we lose our brains and we think that migration is bad. And I still remember the story of one of the Vietnamese boat people. And Vietnamese are mostly Buddhist. And they come and tell me their stories and how difficult and how scary it is when you get in a boat. If you get caught on the way, you get shot. If you make it out of the territorial waters of Vietnam, you still can get attacked by pirates, women raped, and the people just stolen everything they have. It's a very, very, very dangerous in those days. And if you want to know, you know that monk who's at my monastery, Ajahn Santuti? You've met him before. He's a lovely monk. And you know where he was born? In Indonesia. His mum escaped from Vietnam while she was pregnant, close to giving birth. And that was really, really brave. And so halfway on their journey, they pulled into one of the islands of Indonesia, a small island. And that's where she gave birth. So even though Ajahn Suti was born in Indonesia, they continued their journey to Australia. So he's not an Indonesian citizen, he's Aussie citizen. And even though, he looks Asian, he's more Aussie than I am. And very smart and wise. But anyhow, some of those migrants, the one I love to talk about, when he got to Australia, he had just rags on his back. He'd been at sea for such a long time. And he was very scared and also very hungry. But when the boat came close to the shore of Western Australia, he saw two fishermen in a small boat off the coast of Western Australia. And they greeted him in the Australian way. They shouted out to him, "Welcome to Australia, mate! Have a beer!" That was just the way they spoke. And I kind of laughed like many of you did. And anyway, so they helped him and took him to the shore, looked after him, and eventually, this is why I tell the story, he was such a smart man and so grateful. Eventually he became the governor of South Australia. They appoint a governor as a representative of all the people in that state to attend any events and to be like a sign of what those people stand for. And I love that story. Simply because that's what a migrant can do. Someone who had literally nothing and just managed to work hard and show his commitment and do well. But of course there are also some migrants who come on humanitarian programs, and these are people who've gone through hell. People who, for some reason or another, have been in these dark dungeons of the world, tortured, raped, beaten. And if they ever tell you what they've endured, it makes my skin creep. How they survived, I just don't know. But they did. And they were given sanctuary in Australia. Now what do you do with them? Some of these migrants, because what they have endured, physically they're free. They can get sort of a pension, not a pension, but money from the government to survive, but that's not enough. When they go to sleep at night, they remember being tortured. They remember all the terrible things they endured. Now they're physically safe, emotionally, they're still in those dark prisons. not because they've done anything wrong, just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So anyway, this group of psychologists, psychiatrists, volunteers called assets, many of them, I'm being honest with you, many of them every Friday night come to a place called Dhammaloka Buddhist Center in Bonamara, my temple. And they were the first ones who told me, I'm being honest here, who told me we get our permission to do what we do by having gone to university and getting these degrees. But all the important stuff we get from the Buddhist temple every Friday night. That's what they said. And that made me kind of interested. What do you mean? And that's when they started, actually they didn't tell me straight away, they invited me to their place called Assets to have a look and meet some of their clients. And some of their clients came to see me at our temple in Perth. And when these clients, again, say what they've been through, I've got, my goodness, that is just so gross. And anyhow, one of the treatments which they do, can you use meditation to help people who've been through trauma? You bet. Yes. Big time. But how? And they told me there was one of those meditations, and the story behind it, which all of you will know, called opening the door of your heart. I never realized it could be used for people who've been tortured. What they did, they talked to the people who were still not being able to sleep at night because of the memories of what they had endured, women and men, and they were just, first of all, trust had to be built up. So the people who were, the psychologists, the people helping them, they trusted them implicitly. These were really kind people, and these patients or whatever, eventually learned to trust these very, very nice people who just wanted to help. And then eventually, once that trust was built up, honestly, that's the same with, if it's like me, if you think I am your teacher, to have that trust with the teacher. And that trust, when that's built, then I will make suggestions which you think are impossible, you think won't work. My goodness, they do. It's almost like, please excuse me, I'll become your mother for you. And this is what these people do. And when they're ready, they're asked to sit on a chair, close your eyes. That's a tough one to do, because they have been hurt so badly by other human beings. So close your eyes. If you don't feel like it, fine, we'll do this another day. Close your eyes, and then just watch 1 or 2 breaths. And after you've calmed down a little bit and feel safe with your eyes closed sitting on a chair, then, says the leader of this group, or just using one of them, sorry, not a group, one of the people say to this, maybe say this lady who's been so badly treated, imagine there is 2 doors just above your heart region. And just imagine just those 2 doors opening out. And inside that little cavity where your heart is a part of you don't mind remembering. The time before you were abducted, the period before you were put in some dark underground jail and so mistreated. Those parts of you, it's easy to live with. The pleasant memories, the pleasant times. But you know there's so much of you which had endured so much pain, so much disrespect. And that's not in your heart. That's too hard to face. Imagine next, there is a staircase comes down from your heart, down to the ground. And on that ground, you start to recognize these little girls who were so badly treated, badly whipped, badly, please excuse the language, raped, for no reason, again and again and again. And that's part of you, but that's outside your heart, down on the ground. When you're ready, you shout down to those little girls, or grown-up girls, you're part of me. I can't get rid of you. I don't want to get rid of you. Please come up the staircase. Come up, come into my heart. The door of my heart is fully open, no matter what you've endured. You know, with loving kindness, it's always the unconditional part of it, which is the most powerful. No matter what, no matter who you are, what they've done to you, come in. And those parts of you which you've managed to keep out of your heart, those parts of you which in the sight of them causes the pain almost to return, those parts of you have to encourage to come up. Come up, come. And when they get close, you take their hands and you hug them. You embrace. Thank you for coming in. I hated what happened to you, to me, but you're part of me, you always will be. Come in. It takes a long time to get all those parts of you, which is quite weird, but you're ashamed of. You did nothing. You were abused. And these beings, live in your memory, and you want to get rid of them. This is not getting rid of them. It's inviting them in. And they come into your heart. You're never afraid of them ever again. And I remember just talking with another person over in our Nolamara temple. You know why we call it Nolamara? No La Mara. Mara's not allowed in. Kindness is. So anyhow, I was talking to another person when one of the members of our youth group, a young boy, 18, 19, and he was talking to one of these ladies who had been through this process, having made it to Australia, and then having so many psychological difficulties and traumas, unable to sleep. And then as he was talking to her, that's what he mentioned to her. He said, "That's terrible what happened to you, that's disgusting." And that's why I was so happy that she turned on him and said, "You can't say that. You don't know what it was like." Instead of saying it's terrible, that's made me who I am today. And I'm proud of who I am today. I can help those psychologists who help me. I can take a person who's been through hell and say, so have I. And I know what it's like. Take my hand. Come with me and get out. of that pain, of the memory of psychological trauma and physical trauma. I often say that if you really want to assist someone who's really been through terrible times, you have to meet them first of all. I say that sometimes I have to go inside that hole where they can't get out. But if I go into a hole to counsel anybody, to be with somebody, I must always take a ladder. If I go in that hole, I have to know the way out. So I go in there, take their hand, come with me. They'll only come if they trust me. They've trusted too many people in the past, and they really hurt for that. Come with me, so I can take them out. Just taking one person out, wow, what does that do for you? You see the pain they've been through, and you've actually helped? Wow, that makes you feel so amazing. And you can go back inside again in their hole, take another one out, teach other people to do that. It's like opening the door of your heart, no matter who you are, really, and being there for somebody. And that's what they said, that's what they learned, from the tragedies of life. Instead of just thinking, oh, may that never happen to me, instead of saying things like that, you make it work and actually get people out. And I'm always inspired by that, even talking about it, knowing it's possible. There's some people, they have kindness, but they don't have enough wisdom. You add that wisdom to the kindness, and crikey. I say crikey, I don't know if you understand the word, it's almost like a swear word. But it works. And when you see things like that working, it makes you feel so inspired. And anyway, I'm supposed to be talking about stillness, and not about compassion and kindness and nice acts. But that's a beautiful saying. Just say, open the door of your heart, no matter to who, whatever happened, come in. Unconditional. The Buddha did that many times. Now I know those words. You can see it in some of the stories in the suttas. Why? And he's been chased by Angulimala. Angulimala, the drawn sword, fit, healthy. Why? And the Buddha could speak from words of compassion. I stopped Angulimala, you stop. Not just, if you hit me, you're going to be in big trouble. Not as threats. Wisdom and kindness. Incredibly powerful. So anyway, with the stillness, where these things come from, sometimes there's something which I always kind of thought religion was practice and teach me how to be still, how to sit there and be able to receive information rather than just talking back or rather than blocking. I want to listen. The reason you just listened to that story was because you trust me. You could be still enough to receive that, what I always say is inspiring information. That people can be helped. And then that stillness, to be really receptive, mindful, open, it's amazing what you can understand, but the stillness itself is very beautiful. Say it's blissful, fine. It's incredible happiness. The more still you are, the more beautiful that bliss is. It doesn't make sense to me at first. I thought, if you want to be happy, go to a rock concert. And then just jump up and down, dance, and do this and do that, make it noisy. And that's happiness. Once, I love giving strange examples. Once I went to give a talk at a top Catholic school. I love doing stuff like that. Ajahn, what are you doing teaching Catholic boys? I'll go anywhere. Honestly. You do that simply because I've never done it before. And when I went there, the principal was so inspired. The reason why he was inspired, okay, it's another long story. Not long story, I'll try and keep it quick. The principal and the chaplain of this big school, it was the chaplain who really invited me. It's the work, we were both doing for cancer patients, which was working. And so he said, come to our school, give a talk. And honestly, when I come to give a retreat like this, we select the talks we want to give. I wish I didn't. I much prefer just making it up as I go along, honestly. And so I had no clue at all what I was going to teach at this top Catholic school over in Perth. And so when I was waiting outside to go in, the principal said, you have to wait outside till all the kids are settled. You're a Buddhist monk with a bald head. They become sometimes surprised. What we're doing, inviting a Buddhist monk with a bald head into this place. They may not like you. They may sort of try and intimidate you. And he said, as we go in, the chaplain and I will do a little bow to the shrine of Jesus Christ, which we have in the school. It's a Christian school. But you don't have to do that, Ajahn Brahm. You're a Buddhist. And that's when I made my first statement to show that I was going to do what I wanted to do. I looked at the principal and said to him, I demand my right to bow to your statue of Jesus. And you should have seen the face on the principal. He didn't know what I was doing, what I was saying. It was only because the chaplain knew me really well. He said, that's Ajahn Brahm, he's fine. So we went in together, and that was the subject of my talk. Why do Buddhists bow 3 times to the statue of a Buddha? Has anyone explained why? So I say, when Ajahn Brahm bows to a Buddha, it's what the Buddha means to me, which is huge. My first bow is always to virtue, goodness, keeping my promises whenever I can. That's why I have to apologize to many of you who are on the list for interviews this afternoon. And I haven't forgotten you. Please, I'm going to try to start the interviews earlier tomorrow morning if I can. Half an hour. I usually start them off at 10 o'clock. Can we start at 9:30? So those who missed out can actually come. That's my kind of virtue. I feel it's wrong for me to say I'm coming, but I can't. There was one time I was going to Yogyakarta to give a talk. And that's when Venerable Paniwada, that's right, you know him, he was a chief monk over in Indonesia. He invited me. When I got to the airport in Perth, there was a big sign up saying the Garuda flight from Perth to Yogyakarta had been cancelled. Not delayed, cancelled. So I thought, my goodness, I'm not going to be able to go. So I booked a flight the next day. The next day was open. So I booked a flight the next day. But then, having booked the next day flight, I had to do a telephone call to Venerable Paniwada to tell him, did I pronounce that name correctly? Anyway, I did a phone call to him and said, look, I'm terribly sorry. I'm not going to be able to make it for tonight's talk. But please tell people, I tried to come, I got to the airport, but the flight was cancelled. And then he asked me, why was it cancelled? And I said, I'm not sure. Well, I reckon it's because it was the height of the bird flu season, and Garuda is a bird. I think that plane got the flu. And he laughed. He said, that'll do. That's what I'll tell people this evening. Don't fly Garuda during bird flu season anymore. So anyway, the honesty. I've been trained as a monk 51 years. It's too difficult to lie. You feel really bad. You can't do it. So that's one of the things, of virtue of being a Buddhist monk. That's what I bow to. I worship virtue. So when I put my head down, I remember what virtue means to me, and it's much higher than I am. And it means I always try better, even next time, to be more virtuous, to be responsible, be trustworthy, and if I say something, honestly, I really try and do it. Like just on this trip, even today, many of you asked, are you coming next year? What did I say, Chaupo? You weren't there. I said, I thought about it, because if I say something, I have to do it. So I said, okay. I don't think I can come for many days, but I'll come for at least one day. Over to Penang. That's why you ask me, and I say, I'll think about it. And I can't say yes if I know I'm going to break that promise. When I make that promise, I really have to do it. So that's that honesty, that virtue. And so please don't keep asking me to go to places I just can't go. There's only 365 days in a year. I try my very best. If I say it, I'll really try hard to do it. That's my first bow to virtue. And my second bow, I told the group of high school kids, my second bow is to peace. Now that's a word, peace, which has huge power for me. Peace in the community, peace in the world, peace in Penang. I know all of you, most of you, and some of you, are you disappointed sometimes if I say something that's not what you want? Are you upset that you put your name down for an interview today and I couldn't turn up for you? I'm not. It's like breaking a promise. If you haven't got virtue, peace is so hard to find. But if you have a little bit of virtue, the peace comes very strong. And peace is beautiful. There's places of peace. The first place of peace is the community. In the country, I don't care, who's on it, please excuse me, Malaysian, Singaporean, Vietnamese, Thai, Australian, English, US, I don't care about that. You're human beings. And I don't actually even recognize, your nationality. I recognize your humanity. And so to be able to create peace wherever you can is a wonderful thing. And the next, not just peace in communities, we can help each other out. It's wonderful when we stop, thinking we're the best or we're the worst, but we can help. And that peace from just communities, it goes even deeper. I have peace in my monasteries. And sometimes I think if Buddhist monks and nuns can't live at peace, it's a pretty bad monastery. I'm being honest there. And I don't really concern myself whether you are Mahayana, Theravada, Vajrayana. So much so that even many years ago, I'm sure you remember this, I said, why can't we have a bit of each? Why can't I change my tradition? Not from Theravada. I decided to get the H from Hinayana, the AHA from Mahayana, and the Yana from Vajrayana. What does that spell? Hahayana. I thought, that's the tradition for me. I'm a Hahayana monk. Have that joy in your tradition and don't make barriers between people. So then, that was the creating peace, and of course, the peace in the heart, in the mind. That was a big one. I think there's something wrong with this clock. It goes way too slow. I've only been sort of talking for 10 minutes. I said it's way too fast. It says 10 to 9 on there. That can't be true. Sorry? That must be, it's impossible. So anyway, the peace. And that's one of the things I worship the most. Have you got peace of mind? How can you have peace of mind? If you worship virtue, virtue also includes forgiveness. So whatever you've done in the past, you may feel ashamed of it. Forgive it. Let it go. Move on. Please. Otherwise you'll never have any peace. Don't go arguing with people you love and care for and live with. They see things in a different way. I see things in a different way. And it's great. We can discuss things. And we see things in totally different ways, but both are real. We can combine that and have a far better understanding of the world. We're supposed to have wisdom. Is there only one right way? And is the right way your way? I say no way. So after a while, instead of saying it's a chicken or a duck, you know that story. Sometimes you find out that there are many chickens in the world which go quack quack. Even in the old days I used to say the chickens who were in the vicinity of the Fukushima nuclear disaster zone. They get irradiated with toxic radiation, and even though they are chickens, they go quack quack. I'm sure it's possible. Many things in life we think are impossible, but they actually work like that. The next thing is the peace and deep meditation. That's what unites everybody. I remember this story from one of the monks. He was living in Laos during the war, and he went to have lunch in a restaurant in Luang Prabang, and he was having his lunch. He thought he was safe because had the government troops were sitting in another temple, 6 or 7 of them. Their machine guns were leaning against the wall, and he thought he was safe. And then he saw the Pathet Lao, that was the communist troops, come into the same restaurant. And he thought first of, these two armies were at war. And he saw the Laotian members of the communist group. They just sat at another table, and they put their machine guns against the wall and ordered their lunch. You may not know this, but in Laos, war always stops for lunch. I kind of, they were Buddhist. At least they had some memory of their religion when they were in uniform fighting a war. And I think after the lunch, the government troops turned right when they went out of the restaurant, and the communist troops turned left by kind of arrangement so they wouldn't meet each other. I kind of thought that was kind of sweet. And that actually happened, that was true. So anyway, once we have that peace, because we worship it more than anything else, the next thing which I bow to, my third bow, virtue, peace, and compassion. I worship that. If you ever see a kind, compassionate act, someone takes time out of what they're supposed to be doing to what they really need to be doing. And every time I see compassion like that in action, it makes me go teary-eyed. I allow my emotions to reinforce those kind acts. And I must admit, one of those kindest acts I've ever seen, it's only a simple act. It was a Laotian refugee. And for some reason, there was some mistake, she was sent to Perth, Western Australia. All her family was sent to Oregon in the United States. And then she got a message that her mother was dying, really sick. And then she said, I'm only a refugee. I just cannot get a visa or an air ticket to go and see, my mum who's going to die soon. I think you all know what that feels like. You've been separated by wars and an error on some person who decided you go to Australia, you lot go to the United States. And as she was doing this, there was one of the other people I knew. She was a Thai, a nurse who was out of the job because of an injury and she hadn't got any compensation yet. That's why she was hanging out in the temple, helping wherever she could. A single woman with no income. And then she got out a checkbook. Remember when we had checkbooks rather than credit cards? And she wrote out a check, a blank check, signed it, and gave it to the Laotian. Go see your mum. Seeing mum, her mum, was more important than worrying about if she had enough money in the bank to pay the check. She'd probably go in debt. Have you ever received a blank check from someone who's not even your relation? I thought it was kind of really cool, beautiful. I always remember that. Acts of compassion, I worship. So when I bow to the Buddha, I bow to virtue, peace and compassion. And every time I do that, those qualities grow in me. When I told that to the school, I told it in a way which, even though they're all Christians, they really were inspired by it. So about 2 or 3 days later, the principal had arranged a bus to take the kids from Perth to Bodhinyana Monastery, which is at least an hour's drive, to come and visit the monastery. And first of all, the principal came early. I met him when he came into the monastery. I took him into our main hall. I had to ask him to take his shoes off. He complied so easily. And we went to the big Buddha statue in Bodhinyana Monastery, and both of us did 3 bows together. Devout Christian bowing to the Buddha. What inspired him with the Buddha? He understood now what we were doing. That's for the kids. When the kids, I took them into my cave where I meditate. It's not that big, it's about maybe 3 meters diameter on the floor. And as soon as I took them in there, you know what they said? This is a great place for a rave. You know what a rave is? You remember you have to be under 20 years of age to know what a rave is. But basically, for a loud party. And they were just kind of teasing, that's what young people do. But anyway, I've never had a rave in there. But it's a very nice cave. But I enjoyed just the kindness and the connection which we made. That was really important to me. So the Catholics, Anglicans, everybody over in Perth, they're invited. They can come in and see. We create peace and harmony. and created a lot of peace and harmony in the world that way. And that really gives me so much joy and happiness. But anyway, when we... Can somebody stop that clock? When it comes to stillness, what that feels like, sometimes you start meditating, you have to be comfortable first of all. Not too comfortable, but comfortable enough that there's no really big feeling, big physical sensation bothering you. And that's one of the reasons why over many years of being a monk and meditating, I was meditating 5 years before I became a monk. So I'm meditating most of my life. I think that's one of the reasons my body has learned how to be comfortable. And I look through my body, do the body scan, and as I go through it, amazingly, I start with my toes. I relax my toes. So why do you bother with your toes? They never cause you any problem. True. But I want to start there, make sure no one is left out. Just like when I talk to any of you, I don't want to leave out anyone. And so you relax your toes. Please excuse me, but this is no exaggeration, this is true. Sometimes I start relaxing my toes, and they get so relaxed, deeply relaxed, they go into stillness almost immediately. And like it reminds me of the quality of stillness, and I don't have to look anywhere else in my body. And I've got my eyes closed, and my mind becomes still. And so does, my breath. Still breathing, but hardly. That's because I've been doing this for maybe too long. But then I just make sure the body's pretty okay. Nothing is really sort of harassing me. And even if, there's part of me which is aching, I've known my body for 74 years. I should know it by now, how it works, and how to relax it, and how to make it peaceful. It's very simple for me to actually go from my body and I can see, right here. No, it's not that bad. My stomach, no, it's fine. I look at it, relax it, and it's at ease. You can relax your whole body. Actually relax your whole body. One thing which I often notice, I'm being honest with you again now, my shoulders often become tense. And one way I relax them, I'm saying this to you, you'll remember it, don't actually do it now. I scrunch up my shoulders as much as I can. And when they can't be scrunched up anymore, I let go. And they always become more relaxed than when I started. And number 2, I'm also reminding myself what letting go is. You're not holding the problem tightly. You're releasing tension. You're letting go. It's like a string being stretched. You take off that stretch of that string. Both ends are free. And that string, it just gets so at ease. If something hits it, it doesn't make a sound at all. If it's stretched, bing! The more it's stretched, the more of a sound it makes. To me, that's a simile about what happens when you relax even parts of your body. And I do that to my whole body, including my face. My face, if I'm angry, can I do that? I just can't, because you laugh, I laugh too. I relax all those muscles around the eyes, the mouth, the nose, and then all of that anger, stress, fear, I don't know what else is there, just vanishes. All the negative emotions, which is a stress on the muscles of the face, disappear. And then I do the positive emotions. Smile. It's one thing I ask you, the audience. At the end of any talk which anybody gives, please smile. Otherwise I have to look at so many miserable people. You only look at one monk, I have to look at each one of you. And so relaxing everything is not a hard thing to do. And that means that any physical problems, medical problems, can be overcome pretty simply. When was the last time I had a medical problem which I had to go to hospital for? That last time was when I was newly ordained as a monk in Thailand about 50 years ago. Honestly, I've been incredibly healthy. Sometimes I wonder why. Sometimes I realize because I know how to relax. Really, really, really relax and get very still. That stillness is the result. Look at how I'm sitting now. Does that look relaxed? You bet it is. It may be not what a senior monk is supposed to look like, but I'm rebellious against that. If that's how my body wants to sit, that's how it sits. But then I have my eyes closed, so my mind becomes still as well. It doesn't need to think. Imagine your mind slowing down. Sometimes I've played with my audience like that. Please listen to me, because as I am speaking, you will start to notice the words that I say get slower and slower and there are long pauses in those gaps between my words. What was going on in your brain? A lot of you were silent. You weren't thinking anything or saying anything to yourselves, because you never knew when I was going to start speaking again. It's a little meditation teacher's trick to get you to feel, to know what silence is, what stillness is. And it's pretty wonderful. Number one, you can be still. And number one, it feels so great. Please experiment with stillness. And when you start meditating, let that stillness really grow and become so established. A thought tries to come into your mind, and it's not you block it out. It's just you're not interested. Stillness is far more enjoyable. And then you find it's not just enjoyable. From the stillness is where wisdom comes. Real wisdom. Wisdom does not come from reading, from studying, from thinking. That's one of the reasons I told you in another talk. For exercise, I love doing things like Sudokus and cryptic crosswords. Cryptic crosswords I love. It's a bit of an exercise for me. I do those because sometimes the clue is impossible. You look at it no way that makes any sense. So I meditate. You get a nice meditation. When you come out of meditation, the answer's right in front of you. The wisdom, the answers, get born out of stillness, not out of thinking. Thinking gives you headaches. If you really want to be innovative or creative, all the best cultural ideas, they all come from that spontaneous arising of a new way of singing, a new way of painting, or seeing something, describing something, even like in a book. I don't know if there's any authors here, but honestly, I'm a bestseller, especially over in Germany. You know what happened? As soon as my book was translated into German, then it became almost an instant bestseller. And I got all these emails. I got one of the monks who was German to translate for me, because it was translated into German. They didn't know I could not speak Deutsch. So I was invited to all these talk shows. Like evening talk shows like Oprah Winfrey and stuff, but in Germany. I was in Australia, and they didn't realize I wasn't in their country. And I invited all these talk shows. I said, I can't go. Number one, I can't speak German. Number two, you're on the other side of the world. Sometimes I used to like being invited to different places. Once when I went to UK to give a human resources talk, and they actually paid for, business class airfare from Perth to London, and hotel, and a donation to monastery as well. What they used to call in England a nice little earner. But as soon as I got back to Perth, I got an email from the British National Health Service. They said, we liked your talk. We're having a conference in a couple of weeks' time. Can you come back to England to give a talk at our NHS conference? And I emailed back and said, you should be ashamed of yourself in the National Health Service. You should know that too much travelling is bad for your health. And they emailed back to me, thank you. That response is in the front desk of all of our employees. So anyway, I enjoy making jokes about things, but nevertheless, I also enjoy doing things I've never done before. One of the things which I did was actually give the keynote address. The keynote address, and that's to set the whole tone of the conference for the 2009 or 11 or 10 or something, I forget now, World Computer Conference in Daejeon, South Korea. World Computer Conference. Keynote address. One of the hubs of computer technology. Am I an expert on computers? No way. I usually have to get someone to help me. Of course I accepted. And when I got there, I had all of these either big shots from the computer industry. I know one man I talked to, he was the head of the European Union cybersecurity, whatever. And then they asked me, said, you're a Buddhist monk, we never heard of you before. What are you doing here? I didn't know either. But one thing I did tell them something which I did know, that in... How many of you like ice cream? You like ice cream? How many of you eat ice creams in an ice cream cone? You know an ice cream cone? You know where that came from? I think in 1920 or something, I forget when, St. Louis World Fair. You know when you have like events, you always have to have food, and they had food stalls. And it just happened by chance that the store which sold ice cream at the St. Louis World's Fair over 100 years ago, that store was situated right next to the store which sold American waffles. I think you understand now. The two became friends. Guy selling ice cream, the guy selling waffles. Let's combine. They turned a waffle into a cone, put a blob of ice cream on the top, and that's where the ice cream cone came from. Two totally different types of food, combining. So that's what I said. I'm a Buddhist monk. You're computer geeks. See if we can combine like the ice cream cone. And they accepted that. Sometimes I told them. I picked up something, it was actually a water bottle. I said, what is this? And now I ask you, what is this thing I'm holding up in front of me? Is it? Is that all it is? What else could you tell me about this? This is where the wisdom comes from in meditation. You pick something up, you look at it, and you push aside all the things you've ever known about it. All the labels which other people have told you. Ceramic, red, water inside, white on the outside. Everything you've ever known about this, you push that aside. Now what do you see? Push that aside, now what do you see? You keep on looking and you dive into it. You see things about this object I'm holding you've never seen before. That is called innovation. That's how innovation works. You see things which no one else has ever seen in a combination of ice cream and a waffle. And that's actually where you made these great breakthroughs in life. And they understood that. I said, oh, okay, now I understood why you're here. And that was also very remunerative for my monastery. Business class airfares again, a great hotel they put me up in. And they also gave me $2,000 for the monastery. They didn't give it to me, they sent it over to monastery. Just for about 45-minute talk. That's all. It really is a good little learner. Would you accept an invitation to South Korea, all expenses paid, a couple of $1,000 back for your monastery for a 45-minute talk? Okay. Anyway, I think I should kind of be quiet. This is the stillness. One thing I will say, while I've still got the chance, stillness, that is the translation of samadhi. Concentration, I can talk for hours. That is a wrong translation. It does not mean concentration. Concentration is what you did at school. This is way more advanced than that. You become really still. Sometimes people say, well, it means one-pointedness. No. I'm going to be really... the word is pedantic. I know my Pali language. ekagata. Ekagata. Aga is the same word for Agra. That's the Sanskrit form. What is Agra? Agra was the capital city of the Mughal Empire in India. That's why it's called Agra, the chief, the top. And it's the same with many monks. They would say, Sariputta is the Agra, the top in wisdom, Moggallana, the top in meditation or whatever. And once you translate it properly, ekagata does not mean one-pointedness. That's ekagata, single G. This is ekagata, one peak of mind, the peak of stillness. When you're really still, when nothing moves, then the mind just what happens when nothing moves? Things start to disappear. This is after samadhi, stillness, then you get things like viraga, disappearance. This is one of the amazing parts about meditation. Things which have always been there disappear. That's why it's sometimes scary for you, but please don't be scared, go for it. Things like your body vanish. Bye-bye body. It goes away for a couple of hours. You can't feel it at all. You don't have to. This story comes up. This was one of the monks a long time ago. He went on Tudong. You know what Tudong is now, because we had a few Tudong monks here. And when he was walking, got to a village, he said he wanted to spend the night there. They showed him a nice place, and they said that they'd be back in a couple of hours to listen to a talk. When you check in with the local villagers, it means they'll expect you the following morning for alms round. So they went away, and this monk found a nice place to sit under the tree. And he only sat for about maybe 5 minutes, and he realized his mistake. He sat really close to a nest of red ants. Not hundreds, millions of them. And when they came out, there's a monk sitting on top of them. They come up, crawled upon his legs, and started biting him. Not 1, 50, 100. I mean, that really hurts. And so that monk, the next thing he said in his biography, writing about this, he was outside of where he was sitting. He jumped up, and he didn't have any mindfulness. He didn't know how that happened. He started running away because there's millions of ants there. And then he thought, I'm a forest monk. I shouldn't run away. So he went back to where he was sitting, crossed his legs and started sitting again. And the ants crawled up in him a second time and started biting him. But this time the monk didn't wash his breath. He did the loving kindness meditation. He was such an amazing monk that the next thing he noticed was the ants stopped biting him. They were still on him, but they weren't causing him any pain. The next thing he noticed, they were crawling down his legs and off his body. He was sitting perfectly still, but with loving kindness. And after a few minutes, the last ant crawled off his body. And then he went into a nice, beautiful state of meditation. And then when the 2 hours had gone by, he could hear the lay people keeping their promise to come and visit him and listen to a Dhamma talk. And when he heard there was some noise of them coming, he thought this was one of the customs of that part of Thailand, that when they came to see a monk, they would do a dance. And he thought they were dancing. But when he opened his eyes and the lights of the lanterns got a bit stronger, he realized they weren't dancing. There was a whole 100 million ants surrounding him, with 1 meter circle around him of like no man's land. Those ants were protecting him. They didn't protect the lay people. And those are the kind of stories which actually happen. With loving kindness, animals, even ants, they really look after you. They care for you. You care for them, they're going to protect you. So I love stories like that. And it shows you the innovation which many people miss in this world. So anyhow, that was that monk. And anyway, I always talk too much. I should actually answer some questions. Is that okay? Okay. First question. How many questions do you think I'll get through tonight? Maybe one. Why some people seek the path to liberation while others do not? Makes no sense to me. If I do not get jhana this life, how can I make sure I have opportunity to practice again? Practice again. Next time. Next life, thank you. Why do you actually say that if you don't get jhanas this life? I've given you all the teachings. They're not that hard. A lot of times why people don't get those jhanas is for fear. You think, wouldn't you want them? They're brilliant. You bliss out, no side effects. You know, you can have some wonderful times. Body vanished, just the mind happening. And really just splitting out so much inside. No one can see it, because you're not crying, the body's actually not working. It's just like in limbo. And you're always perfectly healthy. You can't be... I don't know if I told that story already. One of my Sri Lankan disciples, he really liked this method of meditation which I taught him. And he had one of his disciples, his own disciples, who was really good at the jhanas. So this man who was a doctor working for the military in Sri Lanka, he decided to invite a TV company to do a video of one of the experiments he did. This guy who's really good at jhana, layman, he asked him to get into the jhana, so the man just sat down and just went into a deep meditation. And that's when he got a scalpel out on TV, national channel, and he cut the disciple's hand, or at least not arm, at least he tried to. It was a sharp scalpel, used by a doctor. Tried to stroke it on this guy's arm, with force. The scalpel would not go into the flesh. He couldn't get it in. He couldn't cut the guy. And the guy was in jhana, so he never complained. He was just in that world inside. And so when he came out, the doctor and also the journalist said what happened. He said, we couldn't cut you. And so the doctor was very smart. He said, would you mind if next time we do an incision on your arm? And this guy was so trusting. He said, yes, sure, no worries. So he went into deep meditation again. And in the next time he was in deep meditation, the doctor, not anesthetized, took away all the bugs, with antiseptic, make sure that there's no bugs that can get inside. If this time he could cut the arm. And this time the scalpel worked. and made an incision in the arm. And then they cleaned up the incision, did a few stitches, put a bandage or whatever is on it, and then took this man out of meditation. Said, "Did you feel anything?" "No." "Well, I can feel it now." You actually did an incision on my arm. It was all done on TV. That's what happens. Unless you consent, they can't even cut you open. You're invulnerable. The only reason I say that was actually to show you have nothing to be afraid of at all. Usually you get much healthier after you've had a deep meditation like that. Dear Ajahn, if one who enlightened vanishes, where is the Lord Buddha now? The Lord Buddha Siddhartha Gautama is nowhere, does not exist at this moment, not around. You can't find any of his 5 khandhas anywhere. It's disappeared, ended. Why do we feel that people have to be there forever? My goodness, if you had to be conscious forever, wouldn't you get kind of bored? This is the end of samsara for Siddhartha Gautama. All happened about the Dhamma. When Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha, he taught many people. He wouldn't actually enter parinibbana, which is where cessation starts and finishes, unless he had a flourishing community of monks, nuns, laymen and laywomen to keep going. And it's still going strong. My goodness, Buddhism is in places like Sweden, Malaysia, where else in the world? Obviously United States. It's over in Australia. You know why Buddhism is in Australia? Once Buddha made a prediction. He was lying on his right side, with his head facing north, and people said his head was facing north, but his face was looking west. And so many people say that's where Buddhism is going to go. And I really challenge that interpretation. Because his face may have been pointing west, but his feet were pointing south. The way your feet point is where you travel to. That's why Buddhism went to Australia. That's my explanation. Why do I feel his presence right before I doze off prior to my surgery? Why do I see him when I accompany monks on Dhutanga? Why that is because that's how the mind works. The Buddha's existence, his 5 khandhas have disappeared, but his influence is still here. Still the memories, the imprint he made on the world has not disappeared. That's why we have all these temples. The real Buddha has gone. But his memory, his teachings, his examples keep living on. Every time you remember some of those stories, that inspires you. It's like his echo still reverberates, even in Penang. Oh, that's good. I think the clock has stopped. Good day, Ajahn Brahm. Thank you for speaking Australian. G'day! Can you please explain how transfer of merits works in quantum physics? How transfer of merits from a person to another being and sentient beings work? It's an easy one. Nothing to do with quantum physics, but everything to do with your experience. How can you communicate with some of your relations, close associates, who are even on the other side of the world? Have you never felt you may have a friend, a student, who's maybe studying in the US, and then you feel tonight something wrong with them, something's happening, and that's common. And then when you ring up or you find out there was a fire or there was a dangerous situation, and you know that. How can that happen? There's no way that could have been told to you, telegraphed to you. Sometimes I think I should keep some of these articles I read which show events like that. The one which I remember was in the Melbourne Age newspaper. Years ago, there was a very well-known veterinarian. He wasn't married yet, but he was going to a big party in the countryside outside of Melbourne, maybe an hour or two away. And halfway on the journey, he was driving alone. Halfway on the journey, he was overcome by a really sad emotion. He started crying really, really badly. He couldn't stop it. He had to park by the side of the road. He never experienced anything like that before. And he waited till he wept and wept and wept and wept. And then after he could get himself together, and he wiped his eyes, then he drove his car to the destination. And when he got there, that's when they told him. At the time, they never knew this time. They wondered why it was taking so long. But they let him know. At that time he was overcome by emotion. His dog in Melbourne had been hit by a car and died. That information, there's no mobile phone service in those days, it was a long time ago. He knew. How? The death of his dog, at that time maybe over 100 kilometers away, he knew that had happened. No details, but something very bad had happened. And that's why he was weeping uncontrollably. I'm sure you've had experiences of that or read about it, or people have told you about it. In this particular case, it explains how transfer of merits occur. You have someone you love, you spend time with in life, you know them. There's always a channel open there. So if, when we do a transfer of merit ceremony, you think of them, you imagine them, visualize them, it's one of the reasons why sometimes we have a photo of them. If your grandma has just passed away or something, and you look at that, it brings back those memories of her, but also makes a connection with her. A real connection, not just talking about that. She can feel you, you can feel her. And when you transfer those merits, your grandma, say, is so happy that you, the grandchild, still remembering the tradition and passing merits to your grandma. Now, how much does a grandma love you? My grandma, whenever I went to her house, even as a teenager, she would always stop what she was doing. She would wash a potato, this is true, wash a potato, peel it, make it into chips, French fried potatoes, and fry some for me. In the middle of the day. You want some chips, Peter? Oh yeah. And she'd just make them. When I told my mother that my mother's mother had made me chips in the afternoon, my mother was really angry. You're going to spoil my son's appetite. She would call up my grandma, and my grandma said, look, you are my daughter. I'll make my grandchild whatever he likes, so don't interfere. I love my grandma like that. Do you understand what I mean? Sometimes your grandmother loves you so much, she forgets what your mother would say, just does it. And when the grandma knows that you love her so much, and when she dies you can share merits with her, and of course it makes your grandma so happy. When she gets that happy, it helps her go to a much higher realm. You can't help it. That happiness, that joy, takes you to much higher realms. That's what I said about that monkey who gave some honey to the Buddha. And because he presented some honey to the Buddha, not as any monk or any person, to the Buddha himself, and the Buddha accepted it. And that monkey just was so blissed out, was swinging from tree to tree, and he was so happy that he missed a branch and fell down to his death. Don't feel sad. He was so happy when he died. He got reborn in the Tawatingsa realm. It's impossible for usually a monkey to get reborn that high, to get such a promotion really quickly. He did that because he gave something to the Buddha. Whoa, well done. If you are happy, you can't go to a hell realm. You can't go to even an animal realm. You're too happy to be there. You go way up to a heaven realm. Basically, you go to where you belong. When I die, I would like to have a Theravada Buddhist ritual. Can you tell me more about this so that I can tell my next of kin what they should do? Theravada, why? Honestly, if you come here, Penang Buddhist Association, would they get a Mahayana ritual or a Theravada ritual? What type of ritual would they get? They would get a Buddhist ritual. What is the difference between a Theravada ritual and a Mahayana ritual? Theravada and Mahayana, because now times have changed, we visit one another, we invite one another to each other's temples, and it's getting much closer together. You can ask them, what type of Theravada ritual would you want? Would you want one where we chant the Abhidhamma? I wouldn't do that. Or would you do one where we get people to meditate in your honour for half an hour? Or we have a ritual where we do some chanting of some of the suttas in English? This is what I've been doing recently when somebody dies. They said it's great to have this chanting, but we don't understand a word of it. So I asked them, do you want it done in English? Yeah. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness. That's the chant of the Metta Sutta in English. It goes on for much longer. But many people say, thank you. Even though the last time I did this was Sri Lankan. At least I can know it now. I know what it means. Thank you. There's some great verses there. Let them be contented and easily satisfied not proud and demanding in nature. And I remember, make sure they remember that when they come on a meditation retreat. Can you be contented and easily satisfied? Then you find the jhanas happen easily. If you want them, if you're proud and demanding, you don't get anything except frustrated. Beautiful teachings you hear. And because of that, it helps so many people. So that's something which you see that's happening in Buddhism. In Malaysia, in places like Australia, Buddhism is growing to be able to communicate these teachings to everybody. It's really beautiful. With limited budget, what type of person best suited to stay in your monastery in Australia for meditation? A limited budget. We don't think about budget to stay as a monk in meditation. If you want to ordain as a monk or a nun, it costs nothing. How much did your son have to pay to become a monk at Bodhinyana Monastery? Nothing. Pretty cheap, isn't it? That's why sometimes people ask me, Ajahn Brahm, I remember this person asking me this, how much you charge for learning meditation? That's what she asked me. I said, nothing. No, you don't understand, she said. How much money do I have to pay to go to one of your meditation retreats? I said, zero, nothing, it's for free. No, you still don't understand. How much do I have to pay? Dollars, cents. And I said again, nothing at all. No dollars, no cents, nothing. She was an American lady. And then she paused and said to me, what do you get out of it then? There was really a sincere question. She couldn't understand why you have something so valuable, such as teachings of meditation, why you don't charge. What do I get out of it? Happiness. Teachings on meditation. These days, I never tell people it's without price. I say it's priceless. People give what they want to make sure that it continues. That's all. But no price on it. No dollars, no cents. Understand? I would hate it, if you had to pay, to go to a retreat or something. Dear Ajahn, last night Ajahn said during the talk that with kindness we don't have to fear, as harm would not come to us, yeah? Ajahn also says it works the same with animals. With kindness animals will not harm us, yes? While it is true for most cases, there are exceptions. Really? A lady raised a chimpanzee from young with much love and kindness even, treating the animal as her own son. Was this in Penang? Because I know that sometimes people treat their son as if they own them, and they come and tell me, my mother gives me such a lot of trouble. Some people are smiling, know what I'm talking about. However, one day the animal turned violent and attacked its loving owner, mutilating her and biting into her, thus killing her in a horrific way. This is just one cause. A lot of times the animals need their freedom. So don't treat it as a son and send it to school. That's not kind. Sometimes you treat animals, make sure they've got a nice home they can go to. If it's a monkey, a chimpanzee in the forest, let them be free. Then they'll always love you, they'll never harm you. If you try and make sure they're like a son or a daughter, my goodness, that chimpanzee will feel they're in a place they don't want to be. You're not really loving them. There are many others where wild animals turn nasty and attack their loving masters, mutilating and even eating them alive. This can be contradictory to the law of cause and effect, where kindness, love are repaid with horrific violence. Can Ajahn please explain? A lot of the time it isn't real kindness. You think you're being kind, but you're not. Let the animal decide what kindness is. What does an animal need? You can't just get a chimpanzee and put it in front of the TV so it watches your favourite shows. Ajahn, you look so happy, like it is your nature. No, it's totally fake. For me, since I was a child, I already experienced some unknown existential suffering, like a dark background music playing throughout my life. Is it karma? How do I heal? Get a better type of music in your background. I don't know, you know what music I liked when I was young? My favourite musician was a fellow called, I'm being honest here, Jimi Hendrix. You know who he was? Who knows who he was? Okay, one. And anyway, what I did, I liked his music, and my father said it was too loud. And so I remember listening to that music while I was doing my maths homework, for the A-levels. And as I was doing my maths homework, my father said, how can you focus on your homework when you're listening to Jimi Hendrix? And then I took out the latest test which I got back from the maths class in school. A+, brilliant, well done. I don't know how, but I do. And he looked at those results and he told me, I don't know how you do it, but carry on. And I've told that to kids over in Australia. If your mum keeps saying you've got to do your homework, do your homework. And if, you can listen to whatever music you like while you're doing your homework and you get straight A's, then show your mum and dad. See, it works, mum. It's just how different people operate. For some reason or another, I could listen to Jimi Hendrix and get really top marks, in mathematics. And I got a scholarship to go to Cambridge in mathematics by listening to Jimi Hendrix. As long as it works, fine. Oh my goodness. The Buddha had two teachers. Just curious, what did he learn from them and why it was not enough to attain full enlightenment? A lot of times because, now you may object to me of this, but the only thing which makes any sense, that what those two teachers taught was not the real first arupa and second arupa. I say no, second or third arupa, sorry. The reason was that after the previous Buddha, Kassapa, disappeared, many of those teachings, those people still recognize the names. They never actually understood what they were. One of the Buddha's contemporary teachers was this person called Niganta Nataputta, otherwise known as a Mahavira, otherwise known as the leader of the Jains. For some reason, Just the Jaina tradition and the Buddhist tradition appeared at the same time in India. And I remember one of the suttas, one of the Buddha's chief supporters, a layperson called Chitta, the householder. He was a non-returner. He went to see Niganthanataputta, the leader of the Jains. And Niganthanataputta was discussing with his disciples, is it possible to stop thinking? Are you interested? And because they saw Chitta, the householder, who was a well-known disciple of the Buddha Siddhartha Gautama, he asked, Niganthanataputta asked Chitta, do you think it's possible to get so still that you can stop thinking? And Chitta said, no, I don't believe it. And at that, the leader of the Jains said, see, even the well-known disciple of the Buddha, which you all know is a follower of the Buddha, even he says it's impossible. And I say so too. It's like putting your fist in the stream of the Ganges River and thinking you can stop the current just with your fist. It's impossible to stop thought. And that's when Chitta the householder said, yes, I don't believe it, because I know it. Belief and personal experience are two different things. He knew it because he can get into jhana. And he does get into jhana. And that's when Niganthanataputta, the leader of the Jains, said, these Buddhists are so difficult to have a conversation with. They're so tricky. It's true that he hasn't lied, but it was close to it. He says, I don't believe it, because I know it. And belief and knowledge is two different things. Does that make sense? So there were many times, even Niganthanataputta didn't realize you could stop thinking. You can be still, really still. Dear Ajahn Brahm, may I ask you share the transfer of merit, send metta in the scientific perspective? Thank you very much. I think I have said that one already. Which path is the supreme? Bodhisattva to Buddha, Arahatship, why? You find out. I say that because I don't want to upset people. And Bodhisattva, can a Bodhisattva become enlightened? Or have you put off the possibility of enlightenment? And it's something which I'm going to tell you, it may sort of shock you, but when a person becomes a stream winner, they can't be a bodhisattva. They're destined for enlightenment. You can't stop it. Within 6 more lifetimes. It's not in control of your will. It's a natural process. There's no alternative. Dear Ajahn Brahm, your talks during this retreat have been more inspiring and informative. I hope to get some of the videos taken in YouTube soon. Best of luck. How's the time? 5:02, quick. Respectful Ajahn, if the goal of reincarnation is to reduce, our renunciation is to reduce ego and practice meditation, some believe the 8 or 10 precept nuns, sadhus, mechis, in Sangha, and less restrictive is Sangha, and less restrictive for women. Yet it seems painful to see a highly realized 30-plus-year-old Siley standing behind a newly got fourth Samaneri in the food line just because of ordination grade. How to reconcile this? Is the lack of full ordination for the senior teacher Siley actually a form of institutional ego that we are asking them to endure? If that's their monastery and they're a Siley, you can put them in the front of the line if you wish. This is not a rule which should be used to degrade anybody. So in Bodhinyana monastery, sometimes we have the bhikkhunis and the bhikkhus walking together on arms round, or walking together to receive food. So we ask, how many reigns have you been a bhikkhuni? How many reigns have you been a bhikkhu? And if she's been a bhikkhuni longer, she goes ahead of you. That's how we practice it over in Perth. Some people criticize us, but I will defend that to the max. Dear Ajahn, is 5 precepts sufficient for one who wishes to become a Sotapanna, or one needs to practice 8 precepts, something apart from Samadhi and Panya? Thanks. I ask people to make sure, no matter what role you are in the Sangha or in the lay community, to please practice 2 precepts. I say that because to make it very simple. And the 2 precepts are never doing anything intentionally which hurts another being. Never do anything intentionally which hurts oneself. And therein lie all the precepts, in those 2. Why do you want to hurt another person? Another being? Why do you want to make life difficult for yourself? From those 2 precepts, all the other precepts come. Drinking alcohol, taking drugs, you're harming yourself. You're harming others. Well, the other precepts, even like eating in the afternoon. I know if I ate in the afternoon, look how big I get just eating in the morning. If I ate in the afternoon, I'd explode. So I don't want to hurt myself or hurt others. Drinking alcohol, I already mentioned that one. That is bad for your health, always was. What else can you say about precepts? Having money, I know that really hurts. Because no matter you look in your bank account, when I was a lay person, it was never enough. No matter how much it is, it's never enough. Is it? Of course it's not. So it just causes too much stress and trouble. Anyway, oh my God, it's 10 o'clock now. Should I finish off now? Or just 2 more questions? Quick 2 questions. The book by Philo describing Therapeutae is De Vita Contemplative, or the contemplative life of supplicants. There is no such book as Life and Times of Alexandria. Difference to Theravada is that they aren't eat before sunset. No. The Philo of Alexandria book is in, obviously, ancient Greek, and the Therapeutae, I forget the description of them, but I do know the monk who actually, he has disrobed since. I've lost contact with him. But when I asked him to please read it and let me know, he said, in his words, dead ringer, which means exactly the same. They're obviously Theravada monks and nuns. In Alexandria, 4 AD. There is no self, and yet we say, so-and-so is enlightened. Who says? How do we reconcile these two statements? Thanks. Just by not saying so-and-so is enlightened. Do you really know who's enlightened? How do you know? If you really know them and live with them for a long time, like I live with an Ajahn, fair enough, I've got a right to say that. He had no ego, no sense of self, enough wisdom, enough letting go to disappear. Okay, that's the last question. If I didn't answer it completely as you would have liked, welcome to life. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Excellent.